Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elise Vennik, and I welcome you today on Tallinna Vesi's webinar. The webinar will be hosted by the Chairman of the Board, Karl-Heino Brooks, and Chief Financial Officer, Riina Käi. Firstly, Riina Käi and Karl-Heino Brooks will introduce Tallinna Vesi's operational and financial results for the first 6 months of 2018, and right after that, we will move on to the questions. Feel free to submit your questions anytime during the webinar. We will answer them straight after the presentations are done. To submit your questions, please use the question box on the right-hand side of your screen and type them in there. Now, I will give it over to Karl-Heino Brooks and Riina Käi. Please.
Thank you, Elise, and good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the Q2 2018 webinar today. As is usual, I'll start with an operational update for Q2. And once again, I'm very pleased to say that operational performance has been very good. During the first 6 months, tap water quality has remained very high, and we've only had one sample failure amongst the 1,488 samples taken, and that related to just slightly higher than permitted levels of iron in the sample. During the second quarter, we've had no failures in water quality whatsoever, so very pleased with that. The overall percentage quality of water is very high at 99.93%. Water leakage in our network, the cumulative total so far is 14.09%, which is slightly higher than where we were at this point last year, and that's related to the longer and colder winter. The second quarter results are already lower, and I think we're down to 13% for the second quarter. So we should be able to hit our 14% annual target for the end of the year. Once again, as we always say, water leakage is a testament to how quickly we repair and maintain a network, but it's also a testament to the targeted investments that we're making into the network by replacing aged pipes that have deteriorated. Final effluent that's left our treatment plant at Palliser remains fully compliant, and we've had no failures in those tests. As you would expect, we work very hard to ensure we deliver an excellent service to our customers, and the current satisfaction rate is 4.1 out of a scale of 5, which remains very high. These operational results relate to our dedicated teams and staff, who are testament to our performance, and we were very pleased. I was quite honoured, actually. I went to London recently where we received an award related to the project we did at Strumi a couple of years ago. If you recall, we had a large collector that was repaired there, and we actually received an international award for the work that we did there in collaboration with Lemminkainen from Finland and, of course, United Utilities back in the UK. So moving on to our projects, something a bit new this time. So we'll talk about our capital projects. I think this project's been covered quite heavily in the media, so we are looking to put an alternative source of water directly into our treatment plant at Ülemiste. At the moment, the catchment, which extends right into Estonia, comes down a channel and enters the lake at the other side from the plant, which means it gets diluted with the lake water. Now, the problem is that in the summer, the lake temperature gets quite warm, and we do get an algae buildup in the lake. It doesn't create a problem with the water quality that actually enters the city, but it does increase our costs in treating that water in terms of the chemicals that we use and the process. When we get this alternative source developed, what this will mean is we can take water straight across from our catchment area straight into the plant when we need to. So it'll be a very good investment and a good additional source of supply. Very delighted to say that the Environmental Ministry have now signed off that proposal, and we're now moving on with the detailed design phase, and I would hope that we can start construction next year on this project, which I think in summary will mean putting 2 large pipes across the bed of the lake and straight into the plant. That probably oversimplifies the project, but that's in essence what it will be. In terms of other projects, our usual 5+5 capital investment programs are going on around the city. We've been working in Tondy Street, we're currently working in Gonsiri Street, and another big project is underway at the junction at Tamsara Crossroads. So that's the operational update. So back to our tariff dispute. As you know, back in 2017 in December, we lost our appeal at the Supreme Court, which means that we're now bound by the Competition Authority in terms of setting our tariffs. Back in May this year, the Competition Authority accepted our tariff application, and we are now in dialogue with the Competition Authority in terms of the contents of that application, and we envisage to have the new tariff in place somewhere Q3 or Q4 2018, subject to the content being agreed with the Competition Authority. Separately from the local court dispute, you'll be aware that we've got international arbitration proceedings ongoing. No further update really. Sadly, we seem to have another delay, and I think that we're not expecting a decision now till probably later in the year. As always, you'll be the first to know if and when we get some news on that. Just a reminder that the hearings were held back in November, so it's getting on nearly 2 years ago now, back in November 2016. And for any of you that are interested, those actual webinars are available on the investor section of our website. So that concludes the tariff dispute update and the operational update. I'm now going to hand you over to Rena, who will take you through the financial results in some detail.
Thank you, Carl, and good morning to everyone as well. Now I would like to give you the overview of the financial performance of Aktsiaselts Tallinna Vesi in the second quarter in 2018. After financial highlights, I will give a more detailed overview about sales and costs. The performance of the group continues to be good. Total sales revenues were 8.5% or 1.25 million euros higher than in the second quarter in 2017. The sales of water and wastewater services to domestic and commercial customers in the main service area increased by 3.8% or 0.48 million euros. There was a solid increase also from pipe construction revenues of 81.6%. The gross profit for the second quarter in 2018 was also higher by 4.4% or 0.37 million euros compared to the same period in 2017. The gross profit was impacted by higher revenues, but also by higher staff costs and lower electricity costs. In the second quarter in 2018, the operating profit was 0.36 million euros higher than in the same period in 2017. Compared to the second quarter in 2017, the net profit of the company was 1.21 million euros higher, being in addition affected by lower income tax on dividends. Now let's move on to the next slides, and I will comment on the changes in revenues and expenses a bit closer. Let's start from the sales. Total sales revenues for the second quarter of 2018 increased by 8.5% or 1.25 million euros as mentioned before. Total revenues from water and wastewater services were by 3.8% or 0.48 million euros higher than in the second quarter of 2017, amounting to 13.35 million euros. As we still operate with frozen tariffs, the change in water and wastewater revenues was solely driven by the consumption. As a result of the negative decision from the Supreme Court in December 2017, the company's tariffs will be regulated based on Competition Authority's methodology soon. As per agreement, the company submitted its tariff application at the end of February 2018. The Competition Authority reviewed it and asked the company to amend it to bring it fully compliant with their regulation. The amended application was submitted by the 2nd May of 2018, and the Competition Authority took the application into proceeding from the 4th of May 2018. The tariff application process is still ongoing. The Competition Authority has extended the proceedings to 90 days, out of which 21 has been used. Now the company has to submit the additional arguments by the 13th of August. The domestic consumption from Tallinn and Saue area increased compared to the same period in 2017 by 1.8%, of 129,000 cubic meters to 7.4 million cubic meters. There was also an increase of 6.2% or 160,000 cubic meters in commercial sector consumption, which amounted to 2.7 million cubic meters. The increase in domestic sector came mainly from apartment blocks, which is our biggest customer group. The consumption in apartment blocks increased by 1.6%. In commercial sector, the growth came mainly from industrial sector, supported also by other sectors. Total volumes from outside service area have also shown an increase of 8.8% to 1.24 million cubic meters compared to the comparative period in 2017. Stormwater volumes from the main service area were higher by 3.5%. The revenues from construction and asphalting services were 81.6% or 0.71 million euros higher than in the second quarter in 2017, which mainly came from pipe construction projects. This now takes us to costs. The total cost of goods sold in the second quarter of 2018 were higher by 14.2% or 0.88 million euros, amounting to 7.1 million euros. Direct main production costs have decreased by 2.6% or 42,000 euros, mostly due to lower electricity costs. Water abstraction charges increased by 3.8% to 0.3 million euros, driven mainly by overall 3.5% increase in abstracted water volumes. Chemical costs decreased 1.7% to 0.35 million euros, driven by lower usage of methanol and coagulant to remove pollutants, balanced by higher usage of polymers to remove sludge in the wastewater treatment process. Due to the hot weather and lower raw water quality, the usage of chlorine and coagulant in water treatment process was slightly higher. Electricity costs decreased by 10.2% to 0.7 million euros, driven by on average 12.8% lower electricity prices, as our electricity prices are fixed. Lower costs from prices were partly balanced by increase in treated volumes in water and wastewater processes. Pollution tax expense increased by 15.9% to 0.23 million euros, mainly due to higher pollution load of pollutants and by 2.9% increase in treated wastewater volumes. Construction and asphalting services cost increase is related to higher pipe construction services revenues mentioned earlier. Increase in staff costs by 10.3% to 1.63 million euros was related to correction of salaries by consumer price index, which was also accompanied by higher workload. Administrative costs remained relatively flat in the second quarter of 2018. For 6 months, it has been affected by lower dispute-related legal costs. Legal costs still will continue to affect the administrative costs up to the end of international dispute, the amount of which is dependent on work that is needed to put into the dispute. Net financial expenses have mostly been affected by the non-monetary revaluation of fair value of the swap contracts, but also by lower interest costs. It now takes us to the cash flows. The cash position as of 30th of June 2018 is strong. The company's cash balance stood at 52.2 million euros, forming 22.1% of the total assets. Compared to the end of the second quarter, in 2017, the cash balance has increased by 16.8 million euros. The biggest contribution to the cash flows comes from the main operations. The company's collection of receivables continues to be high, being 99.6% on average. In 6 months of 2018, net cash flows from investing activities resulted a cash outflow of 1.7 million euros compared to the cash outflow of 2.8 million euros in the comparative period in 2017. The investments into fixed assets were lower by 0.9 million euros and the compensation for pipes were higher by 0.1 million euros. Biggest investments in 2017 were related to Tallinna water pipe. Financing cash flows was for 6 months lower mainly due to lower dividend payment. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you, Carl and Rina, for the presentations. Now we will proceed to the questions in the order that they are received. We've already received 3 questions in advance, but I will give you all a minute to submit your questions, and then we will move to answering those. Please use the right-hand box on your screen to type in your questions. Thank you. We will now start with the questions that we have received from Ilmar Tõnno. I will read out all of the 3 questions one by one, and we will answer them. So the first question we received: by what time are we expecting a decision about the water tariff? Please, Riina Käi, could you be so kind and answer that?
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned before, we have submitted our tariff application, and the competition authority has approved our tariff application from 3rd of May. And as I mentioned also before, now the process has carried on for 21 days, and the competition authority has got 90 days to review and approve our tariffs. The time itself when the tariff will be approved most probably will be in the second half of this year, on 3rd or 4th quarter. Thank you.
Thank you, Riina Käi, for the answer. Now the second question: does ASTV foresee any further court cases with consumers as regards to possible compensation, and how this could influence the dividend payouts? Also, what is the current status of consumers' court cases against ASTV? Riina Käi, would you also answer that?
Thank you for the question. Currently, Aktsiaselts Tallinna Vesi don't have any court cases with our consumers as regards to possible claims. If there will be any, that remains unknown, but currently we don't have any court cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Riina. And the third question we've received so far: do you see any possibility to increase the dividend payments back to the level of 0.9 euros? Carl Brooks, would you be so kind?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Elise. Thank you for the question. Clearly, there are some important decisions facing the company in the coming months, which we've talked about already in the presentation. So I don't really think it's an appropriate time to be discussing and reviewing our dividend policy. So just a reminder, we've obviously got the ICSID decision, which we've talked about, which will come later in the year. We've got our tariff application process ongoing. And we've also got the potential for customer claims, which we've just discussed previously. So I think we have a bit more certainty going forwards, then I don't think we're in a position to start looking at our dividend policy just yet.
Thank you, Carl. That concludes all of the questions that were pre-sent to us prior to the webinar. As I can see, no other questions have appeared so far, but we will give you a short time to yet again submit your questions to the right hand-sided box on your screens. So if you have anything you'd like to ask, now is the time. Seems like we do not have any other questions, so we'll finish the webinar for today. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. Recording of the presentation will be available in the Nasdaq Baltic YouTube channel, webinar playlist very shortly, and the presentation materials and reports can be found on Tallinna Vesi's webpage. Karl, Heino Brooks, and Riina Käi, thank you very much for the overviews, and thanks to everybody for joining. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you and have a good day.